What's going on, guys? It's your boy Austin here with a review of Chainsawman chapter 124. And there's a lot to unravel in this chapter as far as lore and character development goes. As short as this chapter honestly felt, it was wild and had me really thinking hard about what Fujimoto is cooking up for this arc. The revelation in this chapter I think will honestly make you really like Asa, and maybe even establish her as one of the most human characters in the series, or you might just think that she's going to be just a bit of a crybaby. With the initial thoughts of this chapter out of the way, let's get into the recap and the review of the chapter. The chapter starts off with Yuru trying to get Asa to keep a grip on herself, figuratively and literally, and we see Yuru isn't as stupid as people actually think she is, and she's actually really tactical because she correctly deducted the ability the Falling Devil was using and why she couldn't possess Asa's body and how this trance Asa found herself in actually works. And before Asa can fly up in the air, Yuru has Asa form a weapon out of one of her fingernails, ripping it off. And I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of hard to read this given that this is the first time Asa really experienced physical pain so far in part 2 of the series. Unlike Denji, who 24 chapters into his story had died multiple times and suffered some of the worst injuries imaginable. Yuru deducts that if Asa's body feels enough pain, it'll get her out of the Falling Devil's trance and focus more on the situation that they're both in. And this is true because in real life, if your body does experience enough pain, your adrenaline usually kicks in and your body is much more alert. Yuru begins deducting what devil is actually causing this, and it's revealed in this chapter that devils, such as the gravity devil, the trauma devil, or the self-destruction devil, can all have similar if not identical abilities from one another. Eventually, Yuru deducts that the devil is the Falling Devil causing this, but she is clueless as to how or why a primal devil would appear on Earth, and even questions if the Famine Devil has anything to do with it. Yuru tries to convey this to Asa to only focus on the pain, but her trauma is just too strong. And as Asa begins thinking of her cat Crampon drowning in the river, Yuru, with no hesitation whatsoever, cuts Asa's hand using the nail knife that she made earlier. And instead of it working, Asa actually pushes Yuru out of her body and begins to float in the air. Now, luckily, Asa landed on an apartment patio where Yuru scolds her and calls her an idiot since she's trying to save her life, and questions why, now of all times, that she doesn't trust Yuru. And Yuru is making a good point here because there is an old saying that goes that it's better to trust the devil you know than the devil you don't. And I know that sounds corny saying it under these circumstances, but the quote couldn't be any truer than it is now. Speaking in terms of common sense, I mean, let's face it here, Asa's survival will be a lot higher if she works with Yuru, who may not have her best interests at heart, but at least she isn't trying to kill her like the Falling Devil is. And the reason why Asa was even able to push Yuru out of her body is because it's revealed that Asa is afraid of Yuru. And when you get down to it, it makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, Asa and we as the audience know next to nothing about Yuru. I mean, we know more about Kopeni's car and the cat Asa saved when she was running away from the Typhoon Devil than we know about Yuru. And throughout part 2, Yuru hasn't given Asa any reason to trust her. I mean, she tried to kill her first crush, she killed her teacher. It's implied she may have even made swords out of random people, likely when Yuru was asleep. And she has said numerous times she intends on killing Chainsawman and throwing the world into chaos. And now, for the first time, she's finally hurt Asa. And as they're arguing, she brings it all up. Now, it may seem like that Asa is being a bit of a crybaby here, but it's just her way of taking a step back and just processing and expressing her feelings. And it's important to remember that unlike Denji, whose life has always just been chaotic from the time that he was a little boy, Asa is really just a regular teenage girl that got thrown into one of the craziest situations that, well, any regular human being could ever be thrown in. And as Asa's really just processing everything that's gone on, she reveals something that's been in front of our faces and even Yoru's face from the very start of part 2. Asa is afraid of human companionship, yet she's terrified of being alone. And when we look at her past and just how she interacts with people at the beginning of the story, it makes a lot of sense why she would feel that way. Because most of the people that she ever got close to in the end ended up using her, leaving her, or even betraying her. And some of them even ended up dying as a result of her actions or just by being close to her. It's probably why throughout the beginning of part 2, she seemed so shook up by Bucking dying. I mean, it obviously brought back a lot of the trauma that she experienced in her youth, and it only amplified the guilt that she's been carrying ever since her mom died. And I feel like the guilt and that fear has only been building up more and more. And as she loses pieces of her mother, which is fundamentally the root of this fear, the root of what kind of keeps her human. First it was her pet cat Crampon, then it was her school uniform, and now it's her mom's phone. And we're not even at the halfway point of the story yet, where Asa has pretty much lost some of the most valuable things that she's had in her life. And you can pretty much bet that her relationship with Yoru hasn't made this any better. I mean, let's face it, it's made her even more isolated than she already was at the beginning of the story. And it really does explain why she was so heartbroken and even became self-destructive after Denji seemingly stood her up. And Yoshida rejected her in pretty much the worst way possible and even told her to stay away from Denji. Because Asa desperately wants a connection of some kind, but every time she's actually able to achieve an actual relationship or just some level of happiness, it usually just ends in disaster faster than it was for her to actually be able to get it, and she's just left heartbroken and empty as a result. And honestly, I mean, speaking personally as someone that honestly does have these fears myself, I mean, I can definitely relate to this, and I'm honestly sure that many of you out there really that read this chapter probably related to it too. It's why I really do say that Asa might just be really one of the most human characters in Chainsawman. She isn't really someone that had an over-the-top backstory. She really is just your average lonely girl that really does have a fear that most people out there that are probably reading this and even watching this video, they have. Some people have it a lot more than others. But for me, it really did hit a little bit close to home, more than I would honestly like to admit it. In any case, then the chapter takes a dark turn and switches back over to the Fallen Devil who's killed the Devil Hunters. And man, on a side note, the Devil Hunters in public safety are really going out sadder than the Ambu Black Ops in Naruto. In any case, the Fallen Devil is pushing a Devil Hunter on a food tray with soup made out of the organs of the other Devil Hunters, and seemingly confirms that the door we saw in the last chapter are doors leading to hell. And as the Fallen Devil walks in, we see the unluckiest guy in the world getting eaten by what I can only assume is the Worm Devil. So this chapter pretty much confirms that when the Fallen Devil said she came to Earth for the diners of hell, she meant that she's literally feeding humans who float up to the doors to the devils in hell. And we then get one of the biggest reveals of this chapter, that the Fallen Devil came to Earth specifically to target the human in the War Devil fusion Asa Larut Yoru. And that's where the chapter ends. This was an interesting chapter that had a lot of character development, but also a major reveal that raises a lot of questions. Now, thankfully, we won't have to wait too long for the answers, considering the chapter will be out next Tuesday. The interesting questions I hope are answered is, what is a devil fusion? Because for months, most of the fanbase assumed that Asa was an incomplete fiend due to Yoru being so weak she couldn't fully control Asa's body, or a devil human similar to Denji. Instead, she's actually called a fusion, at least in the English translation. So, does it mean that Asa effectively became the War Devil, or will she become the new War Devil if something were to happen to Yoru? Or will Asa and Yoru become a new person entirely? And how does the falling devil know about Yoru and Asa? Did Famine tip her off, or did someone else entirely snitch on Yoru's true identity as the war devil? Now, me personally, I think the death devil is the one that probably tipped them off, considering the crows that have been following Asa throughout the entire story of part 2. And well, crows are generally associated with death, so it could be similar to Makima, that the death devil has been stalking Asa and Yoru the entire time by using the crows. And where is Fujimoto taking Yoru's character? Because we see that Asa is finally really trying to open up to the war devil and is finally letting her know how she really feels about Yoru, and how Yoru will respond will have a major impact on the story moving forward. And well, her track record so far just isn't great. Because every time Asa has tried throughout the story to be friendly and open up to Yoru, it only results in Yoru closing Asa off or using Asa's moments of weaknesses to manipulate her to do something that would be to her benefit. The only time where she didn't seem to berate or act hostile towards Asa is when Asa was getting bullied, and when Asa was being down on herself for being rejected, as she likely been rejected and bullied while she was in hell. If Yoru finally does open up to Asa, they may actually be able to become a more cohesive unit and might actually have a chance at beating the falling devil. Because even though Yoru's plan is just running away from the situation with Asa, this is something I think we all know at this point is impossible to do. I mean, they're gonna have to face this situation head on, kind of like how they gotta face the problems in the relationship. Because now that it's confirmed that they're the main target in the midst of all of this chaos, is something that, you know, they're just gonna have to fight their way out of. There's just no way in the world they can actually be able to get away from the falling devil. Now, I fully expect Denji to help them out in this situation, just because without a powerful weapon, there's no way Asa and Yoru could beat the falling devil. And assuming the falling devil is strong, or at least close to the level of the darkness devil, there's no way that even Denji can beat the falling devil without the help of Asa and Yoru. And although we see that when Asa and Yoru are confident in themselves, they may actually be able to outsmart the falling devil, kind of like how Asa outsmarted the Famine and the Eternity Devil and got them out of the situation in the aquarium. It may be the way that they end up beating the falling devil, since the falling devil isn't a devil that you can just beat with brute force. Well, that is unless your name was Makima. But let me know what you guys think. If this is the start of Asa and Yoru's understanding of one another, and if you're looking for more Chainsaw Man content, consider subscribing to the channel.